This week on Africa Weekly, we take you to Burkina Faso, where female prisoners have no other choice but to keep their infants alongside them in detention. And we travel to Tunisia, to the southern island of Djerba, where the dead face discrimination, with separate cemeteries for people based on their skin colour. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. An armed gang abducted an Italian woman from a guest house in a southeastern village in Kenya on Tuesday, shooting and wounding 5 residents in the raid. 3 children were among those injured, with one, a 10-year-old boy, shot in the eye. The victim, Silvio Romano, had been volunteering for a small Italian charity.
Kulikuja jamaa 6. Sasa
6 men came asking for the foreigner. I told them she had gone to collect her power bank, and they started arguing, saying they had seen her in the house. That's when I showed them where she was.
The kidnappers are believed to have escaped with their victim across the Galana River. The village is about 60 kilometers inland from the coastal town of Melindi, which is popular with Italian tourists and expatriates. Kidnappings of foreigners are rare in Kenya, but have a damaging effect on the country's crucial tourism sector. The corpses of 6 Malawian UN peacekeepers who died in an ambush by rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo on November 14th arrived for burial in the capital of Malawi, Lilongwe. A Tanzanian peacekeeper was also killed in the attack, and 10 others were wounded during a joint military operation with troops from the Democratic Republic of Congo against rebels in the east of the country. The country's UN resident coordinator said her organization wants those responsible to be brought to justice.
The UN Secretary General has encouraged the Congolese authorities to continue taking the necessary measures to bring to justice the perpetrators of this attack.
Wednesday saw the launch of the campaign for the Democratic Republic of Congo's upcoming presidential poll. Voters on December 23rd will choose a successor to outgoing President Joseph Kabila, who has constitutionally remained in power as caretaker leader, even though his second and final elected term ended nearly 2 years ago. But residents of the eastern city of Beni, an area that has been the site of one of the most virulent conflicts, expressed frustration and uncertainty ahead of the vote.
Insecurity affects all segments of the population. If you go and see, people are gone. Shops, health centers, pharmacies have been looted. There is no more activity at the moment.
And as the presidential campaign kicks off, the nation continues to grapple with the aftermath of the deadly Ebola outbreak. Efforts to fight its spread in the restive eastern Beni region have resumed after a brief suspension following clashes. The front-runner in Madagascar's presidential race, Andry Rajoelina, accused the election officials of manipulation in compiling results that showed him short of the absolute majority needed to avoid a second-round runoff vote. Rajoelina, a former president of Madagascar, told a crowd of supporters in the capital that he had been deliberately prevented from scoring more than 40% in the first round on November 7th.
We have filed several complaints with irrefutable evidence. Stop corruption. Stop the hijacking of the people's votes.
The other Madagascan presidential hopeful, Marc Ravalomanana, withdrew his legal complaints on Wednesday over alleged irregularities in the first round of the election. Boko Haram members killed 9 farmers and abducted 12 others in a village in the northeastern Nigerian state of Borno, the epicenter of jihadist attacks. On Monday, they stormed into fields outside Mamanti village, opening fire on farmers as they worked. Boko Haram has stepped up attacks on farmers and loggers in recent years, accusing them of passing information to the military. On Sunday, African Union leaders finally agreed measures compelling member states to pay their dues as part of a drive to reform a body often seen as being donor-dependent. Heads of state and ministers gathered at the body's headquarters in Addis Ababa for what was seen as a last-ditch attempt to push through reforms that have been mulled for nearly 2 years. The AU in 2016 charged its chairman, Rwandan President Paul Kagame, with getting reforms passed. But observers have said that time is running out because Egypt, which is set to assume the chairmanship, is thought to oppose aspects of the agenda. Although not all his reforms were passed, Kagame welcomed the progress made at the two-day summit.
We've seen the Continental Free Trade Area come into place. We have seen these continued reforms happen. We've seen more integration of our continent, discussed, different things done for that to happen.
In this Ouagadougou prison, Pascaline has been awaiting trial for 4 months. Suspected of involvement in a crime committed by her fugitive husband, she was arrested along with 4 other family members. With no one to take care of her 6-month-old daughter, Pascaline had no choice but to bring her to prison.
They don't have baby medicine here as she's not officially a prisoner. The living conditions are not good, so it's not easy.
In the women's section of this detention centre, 13 babies and toddlers live alongside the 66 prisoners. These infants are sharing cells with women detained for theft, mutilation, or even murder.
You've got the accused, the defendants, and the convicts. So at the moment the cells are a bit tight. They don't have much room. They're all stuck together because there's not enough space.
Around 30 babies and children are thought to live in prisons throughout Burkina Faso, but they are not officially recognised by the authorities. No support is provided to their mothers when it comes to food and sanitary issues.
In detention and correctional centers here, almost everything is treated with paracetamol, but babies need liquid medicine to swallow. That's something we need to take into account. In the current provisions, it doesn't exist.
The incarcerated mothers rely on donations from charities, though these are few and far between. And in this West African country, freedom from prison does not necessarily mean freedom from the widespread poverty that makes raising a family so challenging.
At this cemetery in southern Tunisia, Nadia visits her mother's grave. In this district on the island of Djerba, dark-skinned inhabitants and those with a lighter skin are not buried in the same place. Nadia's mother was buried in a piece of land in the so-called slave cemetery. 2 other cemeteries lie a stone's throw away, reserved for ahrar or free men, people with light skin.
This situation was always like this. We got used to it. Cemeteries for slaves and cemeteries for free people. Everyone has their own corner.
Black Tunisians, including some descendant from slaves, make up a minority that is barely visible in the North African country. On October 9th, Tunisia's parliament adopted a landmark law penalising the use of racist words, the incitement of hatred and discrimination. These acts are now punishable by 3 years in prison and a €5,000 fine.
Of course, this law will free us somewhat from this sort of ghetto and separation. Today, when we ask to fix all this, we have something to head towards. We will head towards justice.
Unlike big cities such as Tunis, in Djerba, the inhabitants bury the dead without requiring permission from the council. This allows for divided burial sites according to social status or even skin colour. Until today, town halls in Djerba use a designation on birth certificates referring to the master who granted freedom to the ancestors of certificate holders. In the neighbouring town of Gospa, many complain about the prevailing racism.
They will tell you that there's no discrimination, but it's very present. They say there's no difference between white and black, but in reality it's the opposite. In reality, they despise us. The mentality here hasn't changed.
For activists, the October 9 vote is already recognition by the Tunisian state that the problem exists. They are now hoping to move towards reconciliation, ending distinctions based on skin colour.
Malian singer Salif Keita presented his new album with a concert at the weekend in tribute of Ramata Diarra, a young girl with albinism who was killed some months ago in a suspected ritual crime. Keita has for years campaigned for the protection of albinos, who are both stigmatized and hunted for ritual purposes in many African countries. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.